An alcoholic Irishman meets a married woman in the mountains of Montana and they fall in love, steal a horse, get off their nut on mushrooms, and vomit all over themselves. This is one of the best romance novels that I've ever read. Welcome to Paperback Journeys, where today we're going to be talking about The Heart in Winter by Kevin Barry. This is a literary fiction novel set in the 1800s in the middle of a bustling mining town, inhabited mostly by Irish immigrants. Tom Rourke is our main protagonist. He's a young poet who is basically mixed up in all sorts of shenanigans. By day, he makes money as a photographer's assistant, and by night, he sort of stumbles around from bar to bar, making money here and there and spending it on women and whiskey and opiates. Everything changes when Polly Gillespie arrives in town, and the two of them just have this instant powerful connection. There's this lovely line that sort of captures that, and that's the boy was looking at her so hard, it was like he just discovered eyes. I really like that. Unfortunately, she's a married woman. She's married to a man that she doesn't love and hardly knows, and he's deep in debt and lost in life, and so they decide, do you know what? Let's get out of here. Let's go. And so they steal a horse and head west. This book, if I was to describe it, and I suppose I should really since it's a book review, it feels like a mixture of Lonesome Dove and the movie True Romance, if you've seen that, with Patricia Arquette and Christian Slater. Yes, I remembered. And it feels like those two stories just wrapped up in some of the most beautiful and playful prose that I've read for a while. Kevin Barry's writing style gets compared a lot to Cormac McCarthy and Flann O'Brien. It's kind of sparse, but also lyrical as well. Some people warned me when I said I was going to pick up this book that the prose might actually be a bit of a challenge and a little bit off-putting. A lot of people find that. I have to admit, I did struggle through the first chapter, especially due to the lack of punctuation. There's no quotation marks when people speak, and so, that could be a bit of a challenge as well. But once I really slowed down, I started to appreciate the sharp turns of phrase and the way that the language flowed, and I caught the rhythm, and then I really started to enjoy it. So if you're going to read this, my advice would be you've got to go into it expecting the style to be kind of musical, but it never feels pretentious, because the book doesn't take itself too seriously, and it definitely doesn't take the characters too seriously. They are painted as, I would say, a couple of lovable idiots. They're both so caught up in the moment and caught up in each other that they can't see how much danger that they're both in and what bad decisions they're making. But yeah, the characters are the best thing about this book, without a doubt. Tom Rourke is one of those characters that feels like he has slipped through the cracks of another place and found himself in our world, like he's existing on a completely different frequency from everyone else around him. And when we meet him, I mean, he's barely holding on. He's living this reckless, hedonistic life with no clear direction beyond the next drink, the next hangover. But what makes him really fascinating isn't just that he is self-destructing, but also it's how other people see him. When other characters in the book talk about Tom, they say, oh, there's a bit of witchcraft about him. There's something strange about him. And it does feel like that in the scenes that are told from his perspective. It's not that like he's above anyone else. He's probably like a little bit below the rest of polite society. It's just that he seems like a different creature. And then you've got Polly Gillespie, and she is someone who has survived ambiguous, dark past. She's trying to escape that old life and the person that she used to be so that she can lead a new life. She wants to be better and fit the mold of what a respectable woman should be. But at her core, she is like a wild animal. She's funny and she's sarcastic and she's constantly wrestling with the expectations that are placed on her as a woman in the 1800s. I think this is one of the reasons that in the beginning of the book, she's married to this deeply religious and financially successful man. By the way, these aren't spoilers. This is all in the synopsis of the book, all right? So this is a non-spoiler review. I'm not going to tell you anything about the plot that won't be immediately obvious if you were to read the back of the book, all right? So don't worry about that. But yeah, her husband is pretty much the opposite of Tom in every way. He's, like I say, financially successful. He's buried beneath the weight of God's judgment to the point where he just struggles to find joy in anything. But even as Polly tries to play the part of a dutiful housewife, she can't control that wild part of her that just wants to do something mental. It's not just the main characters though. Every character that they meet along the road feel as though they could have a book written all about them. Even when they just stick around for a few pages, they're so fascinating, so different. And that's something that makes a book for me. When the world that I'm reading about feels just so rich with life and the main characters just happen to be the ones that we're tagging along with. Do you know what I mean by that? Like easily we could be hanging out with this other character that they meet and just follow him and leave the main characters behind and it would still be interesting. But instead we just stick with these two characters. I love when a book's able to do that. Listen, I'm not someone who really reads that much romance, I have to be honest, but this is exactly the kind of romance that I enjoy. There's guns, there's drink, there's drugs, there's survival in the wilderness, there's horse feeding and violence. And I feel like the connection that these two share is going to feel familiar to a lot of people, I think. It's the love that they have for each other, the love that they have for each other. But really, the love that they have for each other is that like is passionate and raw and immature. It's sort of toxic, but it's exciting. It's the kind of love that you normally experience when you're very young. Maybe it's like the first time you've ever been in love. And it makes you feel as though it's just the two of you that exist and you're on a different plane of existence. And because of that, you act silly and dangerous because you just feel untouchable, like you're on something, you know? And they are literally on something, you know? So, I mean, they're high as fuck, man. Like I say, they're taking a lot of mushrooms. Kevin Barry calls this book a Western with an Irish accent. I think that perfectly sums up the book. I lived in Cork for a few years, and that's where the main character is from originally. And the humor is just exact. Like he's snarky and sarcastic without ever being cruel. And that's another thing about the book is that it's really funny. It's really funny if you like kind of dry, absurd humor. If you read this, I hope that you don't let the writing style put you off too much, because the writing style makes the book better when you consider that you are looking at this world through the eyes of an Irish poet. I think the people that would enjoy this are people who are going to enjoy beautiful prose, character-driven stories, and if you like atmospheric settings and unconventional gritty romances. If you're expecting a classic romance or a classic Western, then you're going to be disappointed. Like to give you some context, if you enjoy this book, you would probably enjoy Days Without End by Sebastian Barry, All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy, and Butcher's Crossing by John Williams. All right, so I'm just about to do the ratings. Just before I do though, I want to take the chance to thank all of my patrons on Patreon. You guys absolutely make this channel possible. You make it so that I'm able to put out these videos, to build this community on Discord and everywhere else where we're able to communicate with each other. Just want to say a big thank you to the cult members. It's not a cult. The Named Men, and also a special thank you to the Quartet. I love you like little babies like screaming on aeroplanes. That's how much I love you. If you'd like to support the channel, then you can absolutely join the Patreon by clicking on the link in the description below. Or if you just want to join the Discord, that's free. You can just come and talk about books if you want. Anyway, let's get into the ratings. So let's start with the plot. I'm going to give the plot 4 stars. Even though it's simple, it is an effective plot. There's a lot of tension and you really root for the 2 lovers. Characters, 5 stars. Easy. Easy 5 stars. Every character in this book is interesting. They have amazing dialogue. Tom and Polly are like these star-crossed lovers. This might be my favorite romance book of all time. You know, I might have a little bit of recency bias there. You know, previously I probably would have said Pride and Prejudice. That's kind of perfect, isn't it, really? But yeah, I just loved this. It was such a good time. These probably are the best characters that I've read since reading Lonesome Dove, honestly. And I love Lonesome Dove. Setting, again, 5 stars. They're riding on horseback through the Montana mountains. What's not to love? Originality, you know, I'll give it 3.5 stars. Can I say it's that original? No, not really, but it's not cliched either. You're somewhere in between. It's fine. And overall, I'm going to give this book 4.5 stars. I loved this book. I think that there is a solid chance that it's going to stay on my top 10 list until December. We'll see. We'll see. If you enjoyed this review and you'd like to see my review of Lonesome Dove that I've mentioned a couple of times now, and it was the best book that I read last year, another Western, then you can click up here. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it and happy reading.